So let me ask you a question. Why do you want to die before time? Do you? Suicidal thoughts are not always a desire to die. Often they are desperate attempt to escape unbearable pain, loneliness, rejection, emotional exhaustion, shame or hopelessness. A person may appear strong outwardly while silently carrying an inner wilderness within. Sometimes the soul becomes so weary that death seems easier than continuing to suffer. Depression, betrayal, trauma, abuse, burnout, fear, and prolonged loneliness can darken the mind until it begins to whisper, "Nobody needs me, nothing will change, I am alone." But those thoughts are not the final truth about your life. From a biblical perspective, suicide is approached not with mockery, fear, or contamination, but with grief, compassion, and the recognition that human beings can reach places of unbearable emotional, spiritual, and psychological pain. Scripture constantly reveals a God who sees the brokenhearted, listens to people who are in despair, and offers hope even in the moments where life feels impossible. Many people who struggle with suicidal thoughts are already carrying fear, shame, exhaustion, rejection, or emotional trauma. Using verses about judgment to frighten hurting people can deepen despair rather than bringing healing. The verse people often quote is, "Do you not know that you are God's temple? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy them." From 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. But in the original context, if you take a look at what Paul the Apostle was primarily speaking about people corrupting and damaging God's spiritual community through division, false teaching, pride, and destructive behavior within the church. The passage is not written as a weapon against emotionally broken individuals struggling with despair or suicidal thoughts. When the enemy whispers, "End it," the still small voice of God asks gently, "Why should you die before your time?" Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verses 17 and 18 becomes more than a warning. It becomes the compassionate voice of God calling you to remain through a painful season that will not last forever. Because heaven still sees purpose where pain has blinded you from seeing it yourself. The story of Hagar reflects this deeply. Rejected, abandoned, and emotionally shattered, she sat in the wilderness believing death was near. All alone beneath the desert sky, she could no longer see a future ahead of her. Yet God came near. Before despair became her ending, God heard her cry, opened her eyes to a hidden well, and revealed himself as El Roi, the God who sees me. It is almost as though heaven whispered to Hagar, "Hagar, why should you die before your time? There is still provision ahead of you. There is still purpose ahead of you." Throughout Scripture, God responds to broken people not with cruelty, but with a compassion. Job cursed the day of his birth in deep suffering, yet restoration followed. Elijah, exhausted and emotionally burned out, prayed, "Lord, take my life." But God gave him rest, nourishment, and renewed purpose. None of them could see the next chapter while trapped in the darkness. Yet God preserved them because their story was not finished. So, your story, my dear friend, is not yet over. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. So, therefore, do not surrender your life before its appointed time. Hold on to the hope, wisdom, and the possibility that healing, restoration, and new meaning can still emerge from the very place where you once wanted to give up. The season of abundance, joy, peace is awaiting you. Trust the process. And in the middle of your wilderness, listen carefully for the gentle voice of God saying, "Why should you die before your time?" So say the declarations against suicidal thoughts with me. I reject hopelessness and choose life because God still has purpose and future for me. The Lord sees me in the wilderness and hears my cry and carries me through the season. Jesus is the Lord over my mind, emotion, and future. Despair will not define me. for God is restoring peace, hope, and life within me. God bless.